my fellow Americans. I come here to you tonight at a time when I feel that it's extremely important that Americans draw close to one another. We are the ones who must fight the resistance movement in what is going on in the world today and in the present steps towards taking over the United States of America by this thing which we call world communism. How come, almost step by step, this thing is taking over the world? We begin with the takeover of the Soviet Union in 1917. And we find that the more we Americans have worked towards the analysis of this thing, the closer has come the world control of communism. What comes? What causes it? What is this thing which we call communism? And I must say that there is a great deal of misconception as to what the thing is. And there is a great deal of fear built up by both speakers and writers. What is this thing called communism, and why is it that it is winning victory after victory? Why is it that we in the United States of America today, who talk glibly about containing communism, about having a foreign policy of containment, find that we are now being contained? We, the United States, are being contained, while the Soviet Empire takes over the free world bit by bit. My dear friends, when I left New York today, I glanced at the newspapers, and I found that in the city of Newark, the leading communist teacher, who was ousted because he refused to tell the Un-American Activities Committee whether he was or was not a communist 5 years ago, was reinstated by the Board of Education there by a vote of 5 to 4. He was given $51,000 in back pay. The Board of Education also appointed him as head of department of the school where he had taught. If you think that these things happen just by accident, then I say to you, my dear friends, you don't understand what you're up against. When Robert Lowenstein was reinstated to the Board of Education in Newark, we understand that the city of Newark has passed into the hands of those who are pro the left-wing elite. In the city of Newark not long ago, 400 students rioted in front of the junior high school. The reason they rioted, we haven't the slightest idea. Yet 2 of the leading boys were able to disarm a police officer. And for a while it looked as if the police officer's life was in complete danger. And yet when we examine what was behind this riot in Newark before the junior high school, we find that what was behind it is a planned, organized movement to inflame the minds of people on a racial basis. In other words, the communist conspiracy has many different channels of operating. Now, I noticed that your chairman used the word communist conspiracy, and I have used it also. Before I go any further this evening, I would like to differentiate 3 terms so that we will know what we're talking about. I want you to differentiate in your mind, 1, the communist conspiracy, 2, the Communist Party, and 3, the communist movement. These are 3 different concepts, and we must deal with them differently. Now, the communist conspiracy really should not have the word communist before it. It should be called the conspiracy for world control. Now, what is it that the communist world conspiracy, or the world conspiracy, seeks to accomplish? Now, the conspiracy consists of a small group of people. They are not necessarily located in Moscow or in Leningrad or in Stalingrad or anywhere else in the Soviet Empire. The communist conspiracy consists of men and women who are located in New York, in Moscow, in Paris, in London, in Saigon, in Hong Kong, and throughout the world. Yes, in Leopoldville. The communist conspiracy consists of a group of people who are no longer concerned about what happens in Utica or in Rome or in Kalamazoo or any other small area of the United States or France or England. They are a group of people who are determined to control the natural resources of the world. Yes, they're interested in controlling oil and controlling iron, steel, uranium, yes, timber, and land itself. Now, this conspiracy for world control of the natural resources of the world leads to many strange phenomena. And for that reason, you will find that a man like Frederick Vanderbilt Field, people ask me over and over again, why should a man like Freddie Field, whom I knew very well in the party, why should he be interested in the communist movement? He is comfortable, he is in business, they have great holdings. Well, the answer is that the world communist conspiracy consists of several different types of groups. And unless we understand that, we cannot achieve an understanding of the problem of how to defend ourselves. So the conspiracy, then, is a small group. Now, the conspiracy operates under many different kinds of labels, because in order to gain control over the natural resource of the world, they must control the 2.5 billion human beings there are in the world. And there must be different ways of controlling them. Now, the way they control the Soviet Union or Russia was by actually taking it over physically by revolution and establishing a static control over the peoples of Russia. Thus, in 1917, a very small group of members of the Communist Party, aided and assisted by the world conspiracy, financed by the world conspiracy, were able to establish hegemony and control over 200 million people of Russia who didn't know what had hit them. Now, the communist conspiracy, the world conspiracy on a worldwide basis, operates under different labels at different times. Sometimes it uses the communist label, sometimes it uses the socialist label, sometimes it uses the humanist label, sometimes it uses goodwill label. It is willing to use any group of people that they can move into action for the ultimate control. However, what has happened is that in establishing a world revolutionary movement, they have frozen control into the hands of, a massive control, into the hands of a group of lands, a group of countries, which they control by military force and by psychological and by governmental force. They are not above using questions of psychological warfare and so forth and so on. This is the communist conspiracy. If you ask me who is in the communist conspiracy from America, I could not give you the answer, even though I was a member of the National Committee of the Communist Party. I could point to maybe 1 to 2 to 3. I could suspect a lot of people, but I could not give you the names of those who are the real conspirators behind this whole thing. Yet, conspirators there are, because if there weren't a conspiracy, there wouldn't be this almost symphony of movements of peoples and events which leads almost diabolically and in a very planned way towards the elimination of freedom on a worldwide basis. The communist parties, on the other hand, which were established in every country of the world, and in the United States, ours was established in 1919. They were established as a small group of people, as the framework, as the blueprint, as the skeleton of the new form of government which they hope to establish at some time in the future. Thus, the Communist Party of the United States of America, which, by the way, many people will pooh-pooh and laugh and say, well, it's a small party, it's inconsequential. My dear friend, J. Edgar Hoover has said that there are at present approximately 20,000 members in the Communist Party of America today. Now, of course, you can laugh at that and say that that's about as large as some large universities we have. Yet, remember that in 1917, the Communist Party of Russia, which had been established much earlier than ours was established, the Communist Party of Russia consisted of 25,000 members. These 25,000 members who knew exactly where they were going, who had plans, who were being moved in the direction of their objectives of control over the Russian people. Whereas the rest of the mass of people just didn't know what was going on. They may have suspected certain things, but by and large they were completely ignorant of what was going on. Yet those 25,000 members were able, in the period from January 1917, when the socialists or the social democrats had seized power, the Kerensky government had seized power in Russia, from January of 1917 to November 5, the October Revolution, was a brief period of only 9 months. In 9 months, Lenin, building on what Kerensky had done, he was able to take over 200 million people. Now, Stalin once put it very graphically, one of these meetings, in telling you how effective a Communist Party can be. Because the Communist Party must originally be destructive. He said it takes 300 or 400 people to build a bridge. He said, but it takes only 1 or 2 to destroy it. And so the Communist parties, which are established in every country of the world, and sometimes they're called by other names. Sometimes they're called labor parties or socialist labor parties. But the answer as to whether they're Communist parties or not is to whether they are affiliated, whether they are sympathetic, whether they're cooperative with the Soviet system. Now, the Communist parties of the world are a skeleton of the new form of government. I say that advisedly because so many people are misled by the word party. They're accustomed to thinking of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and even the Labor Party and the Socialist Party as political parties. The Communist Party is not a political party. The Communist Party should be called a communist government because the Communist Party addresses itself to all the problems that mankind in its geographical boundary has. In other words, the Communist Party of New York State is concerned with the elections. It's concerned with all the political parties. And I might tell you, since I was one of the people who operated up and down the state. I know practically every crook and cranny of the state. Love it dearly. But I operated for the Communist Party in this area. And I know, for instance, we had our fingers in the Democratic Party, we had our fingers in the Republican Party, we had our fingers in the American Labor Party, we had our fingers in the trade union movement. It is interested not only in politics, it is interested in the economic, it is interested in the social life of the people. It is tremendously interested in the educational structure of the people. It is interested in the cultural life of the people. It is interested in the morality of the people. Not necessarily promote better morality, because the Communist Party at one time will promote debauchery. It will promote chaos in morality. At another time, it will set up very high ideals, depending upon which suits their purpose at a particular time. Since their approach to morality is a question of tactics and not a question of principle. For them, there is only one morality, and that is the support of the communist system. So the Communist Party, which may seem a little ridiculous to you, I remember we used to go to the state legislature in Albany frequently, at the public hearing. I remember one time we had a hearing on the milk bill, which was pending. There was a milk strike in New York State, and there was a great big hearing that was held in the educational hall there in Albany. And the Communist Party spoke up, the Socialist Party spoke up, and so forth and so on. Now, many people are fooled by what the Communist Party says on current social, economic problems, because the Communist Party makes it its business to be in the forefront of any particular ill that there is, any particular unhappiness that there may be, any particular injustice that there may be, not for the sake of bringing about justice out of the injustice, but for the sake of gaining control and getting the ear of the mass of the people. I remember one time at that milk hearing, we came to the question whether the Communist Party should be allowed to speak or not. And the legislative leaders didn't want them to speak. And so one of the farmers said, well, gee, let them speak. They drink milk, don't they? And that, of course, solved everything. When the Communists took the forum, he was for giving everything to everybody. In other words, they could afford to give everything in words to everybody and gain the following of people, since they were not responsible for controlling the situation. The Communist Party, if it consists in your district of only 10 people, is something that you have to watch, is something that you have to be worried about, because what happens is those 10 people are not just 10 people. They multiply by the number of activities that they engage in. For instance, when I was a communist on the college campus, I was not only a member of the Instructors Association, but I was also a member of the Association of University Professors. I was a member of the Anti-Fascist League. I was a member of maybe 10 or 12 different organizations. So that in those organizations, I was able to find other people to carry on the work of the party. The Communist Party is a nerve center. It's like an enzyme which creates the power for passing on the material which has to be utilized. The Communist Party of America at present has been declared outlaw by the Supreme Court, but they were given a chance to re-argue their case. And in the meanwhile, they are building a mass movement. You'll find them here in this district holding meetings. You'll find them in the Albany district holding meetings. Out in Long Island, they took over one of the biggest banks the other night, held a meeting with the leading communists. When I say the biggest banks, they have an auditorium, which was utilized for the purpose of gaining support from people who say, well, why shouldn't they be free to speak up? Isn't America free for people to speak up? The last term which I wanted to discuss with you was the communist movement. Communist conspiracy, communist party, communist movement. Now, the communist movement is an attempt to establish a social, ideological attitude which is pro-left, which is in favor of the communist opinion. Now, you must understand what communism is in order to understand when you're being indoctrinated and taken over into the communist movement. It does not come to you in labels. It comes to you under very pleasing devices. You know, at first, I joined the movement out of a will to goodness. And by the way, that's one thing you have to understand. If you don't understand that there are millions of human beings throughout this world who are joining the communist movement out of a will to goodness, you will make very sad mistakes. Misguided will to goodness. They don't know where they're going, they don't know what they're being trapped into, but a will to goodness nevertheless. However, those who remain in the Communist Party, like myself, who joined originally for will to goodness, actually stayed because it gave us a sense of power. As time went on, I got more and more power. In 1938, I left my job as a teacher, and I took a job with the trade union movement. I took a job with the teachers' union. I organized teachers' unions throughout the state, just as I had to organize unemployed councils throughout the state. And then I decided that the Communist Party needed me more, and they had asked me to join openly. In 1943, I joined the Communist Party openly and became a member of its national committee. But during all those years, I was functioning with the party and was a member of the party. I was making contributions, I was getting instructions, I was admitted to their secret meetings, and so on. So that there was lie upon lie in the living within the communist movement. But, as I said before, the will to goodness may start you off. But if you stay with the movement, largely it's because of the desire to get power. By 1943, this country was in the middle of a war, and the Soviet Union had so maneuvered things, the world conspiracy had so maneuvered things, that the United States was on the same side as the Soviet Union. That was the beginning of the end. For we gave to Russia $11 billion of lend-lease, which was neither lending nor leasing. We harbored within our government men and women who were part of the communist conspiracy and who were agents who functioned at the very highest levels, as you know, within our Treasury Department, within our State Department, within various other institutions. There's one thing which I can tell you tonight. It is that the people that I knew, who were just simple people on the same level as I was, back in the 30s, are now wielding tremendous influence. They are in key positions. And these are the people who are making policy, unfortunately, in sections of the American government. Now, the communist movement in America had been in existence for a long time. A lot of people think that communism just came after the Russian Revolution. Oh, no, my dear friends. Back in the middle of the 19th century, Karl Marx came to the United States. As a matter of fact, he was here both before and after the Civil War. Karl Marx lectured in New York, he lectured in Philadelphia, he lectured in Boston. And as a matter of fact, the first Communist International was established in 1865. The first one closed its life here in the United States. Now, what did they unleash upon the United States? They unleashed an attitude of life different from the attitude that we have, that the Western world has had, that the Christian world has had, upon the concept of what is man. Now, in order to gain control over mankind, the idea is that you must be able to control the human mind. Now, the communist concept of man is materialistic. The concept of man is that he's just nothing but matter. Man is born, he grows, he dies, he decays, and that's the end of him. If that is not true, if the Judeo-Christian concept of man, as embodied in the Old and New Testament, is that man is the creature of God. If that is the concept of man, then each one of us, no matter how crippled, how deformed, how weak, no matter what we are, each one of us has that divine spark which is trying to find its way back to God. Each one of us then becomes a sacred person, an individual. Then it follows, like night and day, that you can't kill off those who are sick, those who are deformed, without violating the great rules of life. On the other hand, if the communist concept is correct, then it is right that those who have the superior intellect, and notice, for instance, the rise of the left-wing elite, the superior intellect, the rule of the university, of certain types of universities. If man is just nothing but matter, then the superior intellects have the right to rule the inferior intellect and to eliminate those that they consider a drag upon society. The communist movement on a worldwide basis has pushed the idea of euthanasia, the idea that a person who is too sick should be killed off. And here we come to another story. The communist movement on a worldwide basis does different things at different times. In the United States of America today, which they're seeking to get ready for the kill, they will do everything they possibly can to unleash confusion, chaos, depravity, perversion, conflict of people against one another, of parents against children, children against parents, of women against men, of black against white, of Protestant against Catholic, of Jews against Catholics and Protestants, and Catholics and Protestants against Jews. In other words, every attempt is made to divide, to create chaos, to create confusion, and to make a body politic so paralyzed that it's unable to resist. Now, in the light of that, my dear friends, we need desperately centers of learning which are convinced that this Christian civilization is worth saving. And we need scholars who are not worried about degrees, who are not worried about great big campuses, who are not worried about the great institutions, the great universities that we have today, which have forfeited their right to be called a university. There are in the United States at present, and I say this categorically, I would say there are more than a dozen universities that are worth the name universities. The others are institutions for indoctrination, for keeping a people moving in the direction in which the elite wanted to go.